The 1950s was a decade that produced some of the most groundbreaking and influential TV shows in history. It was considered the golden age of TV, as watching television became a new form of entertainment. As broadcasts transitioned from radio to this new exciting medium, many viewers were tuning into television for the first time. By the end of the decade, almost every American household had their very own TV sets sitting in their living room. Join Facts First as we take an in-depth look at the most watched TV shows of this trailblazing decade. 1950, Texaco Star Theater. This comedy variety show was initially broadcast on the radio from 1938 to 1949. In 1948, it made the jump to TV and went to air until 1956. It was notable for being one of the first examples of successful television programming, and is often remembered for giving Milton Berle, the show's host, his nickname of Mr. Television. After Texaco ended its sponsorship with the program, it was rebranded as The Milton Berle Show for its final 3 seasons. When it first aired on June 8, 1948, Texaco made sure their employees were featured prominently throughout each episode. They would typically be depicted as grinning guardian angels who would perform good deeds in some shape or form. Each week's airing opened up with a quartet of Texaco singers who performed the theme song. Texaco Star Theater was widely credited with dialing up American TV set sales. During the series' run, it's been said that the number of TV sets in American homes increased from just 500,000 to over 30 million. 1950 was also the year that marked the first time the Nielsen rating system was used. The variety show became known for its unpredictable live performances. Berle's comedy was typified by slapstick and wild facial contortions. Skits that were especially popular were ones that featured Berle in women's clothing. 1951, Arthur Godfrey's Talent Scouts. Arthur Godfrey's Talent Scouts was a variety program where scouts would bring their discoveries in front of live studio audiences to show off their talents. Most of these discoveries, however, were actually struggling professionals hoping to land their big breaks, so the quality of the talent was fairly decent. At the end of each episode, the studio audience would choose the winner via an applause meter. The series started out like many other shows of the era as a radio program, but debuted on television in 1948. Throughout its run, the show helped boost the careers of stars like Patsy Cline, Tony Bennett, Pat Boone, and Eddie Fisher. The program ran until 1958, and by that time, audiences had begun to prefer westerns and sitcoms over variety shows. Hey, if you're enjoying this video so far, be sure to give it a like, and subscribe to Facts First if you haven't already. And stick around for more of the best TV shows of the 50s. 1952 to 54, I Love Lucy. This CBS sitcom is perhaps one of the most influential television programs to ever air. For 6 seasons, consisting of 180 episodes, the show stars Lucille Ball and husband Desi Arnaz, alongside supporting cast members Vivian Vance and William Frawley, provided viewers with more laughs than they were capable of counting. The series followed the life and exploits of Lucy Ricardo, played by Ball, a young, bumbling, middle-class housewife who lived in New York City. Lucy would come up with ill-advised schemes and plots with her friends, Fred and Ethel Mertz, played by Frawley and Vance, but most of these ploys would be foiled by her band leader husband, Ricky Ricardo, portrayed by Arnaz. I Love Lucy became the most-watched television show in America for the first 4 of its 6 seasons. Since the series ended in 1957, it's remained on the air in syndication in dozens of languages across the globe. It received many Emmy Awards and nominations, and was the first series to feature an ensemble cast. It's often considered one of the best and most influential sitcoms in history. In 2012, in a survey conducted by People magazine, it was voted Best Television Show of All Time. 1955, The $64,000 Question. Originally broadcast between 1955 and 58 on CBS, the $64,000 Question was a game show where contestants would answer general knowledge questions to earn money that doubled as each question became more challenging. The last question presented contestants with a chance to win the show's top prize of $64,000. The series, much like many other game and quiz shows from the era, was troubled with scandals. For one thing, it was sponsored by Revlon, and the company's CEO, Charles Revson, often interfered with its production. Whenever he personally disliked a contestant, he would have them booted from the show regardless of the audience's reaction or their ability to answer the questions. Joe Cates, one of the show's producer, further revealed that the IBM sorting machine that was used to present the lower dollar questions in an attempt to give the illusion that these questions were selected at random was in fact just a ploy. In reality, all the cards and their questions were identical. Another scandal that called into question the show's legitimacy involved a contestant that failed a civil service exam in 1960 when applying for a position with the U.S. Census Bureau. This inevitably led to the program producers acknowledging that he'd been given the questions before going on the show, although they denied supplying him with the answers. At the end of the day, the contestant was exonerated of any wrongdoing, but the public lost a tremendous amount of faith in the program, and it became a well-known fact the game show was rigged. 1956, I Love Lucy yet again. Although I Love Lucy briefly lost its top dog status in the ratings the year before, it once again became the most popular show on television in 1956. A year later, however, it was canceled, despite the fact it was still doing quite well in viewership. In 1957, a modified version of the series premiered called The Lucille Ball-Desi Arnaz Show and went on to run for 3 years. 1956 to 1959, Gunsmoke. By the mid to late 50s, sitcoms began to fall out of vogue and westerns soared in popularity. One such western, Gunsmoke, got its start as a radio series that ran between 1952 and 61. In 1955, it was adapted into a television series that proved one of the most popular and longest-running series of all time. Not only did it sit on top of the Nielsen ratings for the remainder of the 50s, it also aired for 20 seasons consisting of 635 episodes. The series was set in and around the town of Dodge City, Kansas during the 1870s. This was the era where the American West was being established by settlers. The series' main character was Marshal Matt Dillon, played by James Arness. Dillon was tasked with upholding the law in the Wild West town where people would often display very little respect for authority. He dealt with a multitude of different problems pertaining to frontier life on a daily basis, from gunfights to cattle rustling to saloon brawls and land feuds. These difficult situations often called for him to display outstanding braveness while maintaining sound judgment. Fortunately, Marshal Dillon was well versed in both of these qualities. What made the show so popular was how it expertly showed off the best that the burgeoning television industry had to offer. Its cast, writers, producers, directors, and various other crew members were some of the most talented people in show business at the time, and there hasn't been another dramatic series since Gunsmoke that has come close to accomplishing what it did during its prolific 20-year run. Now it's time to hear from you. What's your favorite TV show from the 1950s? Let us know in the comments section below. And before you go, make sure you give this video a like and subscribe to Factsverse if you haven't already. Click the bell icon to stay updated on all our latest content.